2026 Basin Plan review is currently underway, marking a major milestone for water management in Australia's largest river system. Managed by the Murray Darling Basin Authority, which is the MDBA, the review evaluates the effectiveness of the 2012 Basin Plan and will recommend future adaptations. Now, Chris Lahy lives at Lake Boga. He's the celebrity of Lake Boga. He keeps telling me that. Very important person. In the heart of the Murray Darling Basin. He was a dairy farmer and has long experience of the Murray Darling Basin Plan and the issues in his area. Now we'll speak to Chris about some of those issues and how it's all looking. Chris, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the opportunity once again.
I love the hat.
Thank you. I'm feeling very, very country at the moment.
You are. I mean, tell me about that before I get into the next bit. Tell me about the hat.
Well, actually, this is a hat that my adult children, gave to me for my birthday. So it's an Akuba Traveller hat. So now I'm doing a lot of that, Mike. So I feel the hat's very appropriate to wear.
Tell me about the. I think last time we spoke, we were talking about all sorts of things. Wasn't as gloomy as what we have at the moment. This fuel crisis is a real bugger, isn't it? What's the reaction from the locals in the area, and how's it looking?
I think everyone is trying to take a deep breath at the moment. There's a little bit of anxiety with fuel supply, but I think, and speaking to a lot of farmers, businesses, I think they're quietly confident that everyone just should take a deep breath and things will go along as normal, providing no one just gets crazy. And I did actually happen to see a gentleman rock into town yesterday with his trailer with 16 jerry cans on his trailer. So he was a bit panicked because he can't get fuel delivered to his farm. So I figure that's probably fair enough. He needs a bit of fuel for his four-wheel drives and his tractors. So, but yeah, I said I'm impressed with the collection of jerry cans, shapes, sizes, and colours.
It's pretty worrying.
A lot of commentary in town. He spent most of his time trying to defend his position. So,
and he'd be buying beers all round. I would imagine.
Maybe so.
And he should too, because the last thing we want is panic buying. And I do understand if you're miles away from anywhere, kilometres away from anywhere, you got to have that. You got to have that juice in the tractor and the truck and the car, don't you?
Absolutely, and that's what we're finding at the moment. We're sort of having this cycle of fuel service stations and fuel outlets actually out of fuel for a number of days until their trucks arrive. Robin Vale was the most recent one this week in our local government authority. So, and different outlets are experiencing some shortages, but generally I think it's flowing enough for there to be supply. But the price is really quite breathtaking. I think the diesel was close to $3 here in Swan Hill, Lake Boga, a litre for diesel.
Let's talk about another possible stuff up. The review's underway at the moment for the Murray Darling Basin Plan Review 2026. Can you tell us about why this is happening and when's this report due?
Well, it's in a bit of a consultative stage at the moment, so there's a lot of encouragement for all groups across their communities to make submissions to the Murray Darling Basin Authority, and they will then be considered for a secondary round of, consultations, which are probably more focused on groups when that actually happens, be it user groups, be it business groups, but I think they're asking for submissions that things around climate adaptation, which we're hearing a lot about, things relevant to First Nations peoples. So they're asking for commentary on more than just water. It's about environment. It's about the First Nations people. We're looking at environmental outcomes at the moment. Now, this basin plan's been in long enough now for us to start seeing some outcomes. So I think they want a lot of commentary on that. I think the thing that's impacting people the most across particularly the southern basin along the Murray region rivers and Darling and the Murrumbidgee rivers are the social and economic impacts. We're seeing, Mike, is the change in social structure and which is businesses moving out of town, schools closing, more farmers owning more land, just sort of cope with having less water allocations and those sorts of things. So I think the social and economic impacts will be quite far-reaching, and I'm really quite interested to see some of the submissions in that respect. I mentioned First Nations people. I think there's been more involvement there, particularly with what's been going on in the Darling or the Barker River. So yeah, there are some of the things that we're looking at the moment. Being 13 years since the implementation of the plan, I think it's like I mentioned, we've got to see some outcomes now, and things that I've observed in my local area, with managing river flows to, I guess, replicate or to mimic flood cycles. That's been a really interesting thing. And arguably the old timers, those older generations who've seen a lot, and say that the Murray Darling Plan has interfered with probably the natural cycles, even though we think we're doing good. So these are some of the things we're going to see in the commentary.
I read at the top of the hour just some brief headlines. I just want to read this to you and get your thoughts on this. The Victorian Farmers Federation says the Murray Darling Basin Authority's own analysis shows further water buybacks are unlikely to deliver significant improvements in environmental objectives across the basin, and zero improvements in any Victorian river systems, including the Victorian Murray. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I tend to agree with that. I mean, the water buybacks since the inception of the plan, and particularly in the early stage of the plan, we saw enormous buybacks, and we saw the emergence of water trading organisations and companies. And I think that is what we've seen most of. And the buybacks arguably have not achieved an outcome that I think the government was espousing the virtues of. So I think I would agree with that statement from the Victorian Farmers Federation. Absolutely.
Who are the main supporters of the plan, besides government, of course?
What's really interesting is I'm finding across this particular part of the southern basin and the local government authorities on both sides of the river, they're very reluctant to be outspoken against the basin plan. I guess they don't want to bite the hand that feeds, and so it's disappointing because I think the organisations that are losing the most in this whole thing with the basin plan are the local government authorities, particularly those who occupy areas that are benefit from the activities in the basin in their local government area. So the Swan Rural City Council, for example, or across the river in New South Wales, the Murray River Shire. Murray River Shire has had enormous buybacks. I think some of the most significant parcels of land, the Yanga Station was actually bought back by the New South Wales state government in the buybacks, and with allocations. So, and that has impacted greatly the outcomes of economic development in the Murray River Shire, which was formerly the Walkall Shire. And here in the Swan Rural City Council, well, we're seeing it's now starting to harm the activities of horticulturalists, those who grow vegetables, fruit, table grapes and wine grapes and that sort of thing. So I think in reality the most outspoken groups are, of course, the farmer groups, irrigation groups, the farming organisations like the Victorian Farmers Federation, the National Farmers Federation are having some say, but they're all sitting on the fence there. Of course, they're all nationals. So that's what's going to happen there. But I think the reality is They're seeing what's actually happening. They're seeing things change. They're seeing the social fabric of their communities change. So there's no argument that it's not impacting, and in some ways adversely.
And just finally, do you think the plan should be abolished? Is it possible to do that?
How do you put the genie back in the bottle, Mike? I do not know how that's done.
Give it a good rub.
Yeah, well, maybe if we watch enough of I Dream of Jeannie, maybe it's all possible. But look, I mean, and look, it's no secret. I've been saying ditch the plan for a long time, and things like going. You can't wind back the clock. But what you can do is change policy. What you can do is say, okay, let's return the allocations to farmers before deregulation, and let's get back to common sense management of our river systems in way of allowing the rivers to run, irrigation water to flow, food to be grown, and get back to that type of management before the things like deregulation started to interfere with how things are managed. Because deregulation, what we did see, Mike, and I'll just briefly touch that deregulation saw the dramatic emergence of water trading out of the river systems. So that is not a good thing. So let's return the water allocations back to those people who most benefit from it, the farmers, and can give back to our economies, our national economy, our state and local economies, and also stop corporatising water entitlements, because those people who are holding the water entitlements are the large corporations who have the capacity to buy large amounts, large entitlements. I think I might have mentioned in previous interviews of some of our well-known politicians are amongst that group of people who own a large amount of water entitlements.
Maybe, wouldn't it be terrible to say that politicians could be a bit naughty at times? I mean, that's just a terrible thing that I would ever say that they would.
Can't imagine it ever happening, Mike.
No, not
being naughty.
Not in our lifetime. Look, if somebody wants to find out more or just have a bit of a chat with you, because you have hit on some very good points there, and I totally agree with you, and I think we need to know more. And sometimes it's not so bad going backwards, because and then looking at going forward again, because at the moment it would seem that by going forward it's sort of like we're all blindfolded and walking through a maze, and at the end of the maze, if you take that wrong door, there's a very steep drop, and that's what's going to happen to many of our people on the land. We don't want that happening. If somebody wants to find out more though, Chris, from you, how do they do that?
Yeah, sure. Look, if you jump onto the Citizens Party website, all my contact details there. If you actually Google me, you can find my contact details. They're all public. So, and I have been getting some emails and some phone calls in from, I guess, from your viewers and other people. So that system does work. So yeah, feel free to jump on and ask me any sorts of questions in related to the Basin Plan or other things that actually the plan has not even discussed. I've been reading through the Basin Plan's review and some things that they are suggesting they may look at, but some of the things that, and this might be something to discuss in a future time slot, Mike, is okay, well, what about where can we add more water to the basin? And things like major water projects, and these have not been considered. It's all about reduction, not increase. So I think there's a lot of scope for that, and I know that's been considered. The New South Wales State Government were quietly considering a major project. That was the Clounce River Diversion Scheme. So these are things that haven't been considered. It's all been user pay, and things that governments have been saying in the past. No more dams. If you want a dam, you pay for it. So I think it's not a very sustainable approach to the future if you want to put more water in the basin, and buybacks aren't going to do it, Mike.
Yeah, agree. Chris Lahy, by the way, Easter, you may have forgotten about it, but the bunny does come to Lake Boga. You'll have to be checking under your in the chook house or something like that.
You're right, Mike. I think I've spotted a bilby running around the Easter bilby.
Put away that 12 gauge. We don't do that anymore. Chris Lahy, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everyone, and happy Easter, everybody.
And same to you too. And it's always nice to chat too. So have a great and a very safe Easter And
Well, thank you.
good luck with your driving, because you've got to find the fuel to get from A to B. So good luck with that one.
Well, that's all right.
Chris Lahy, out hunting for that rabbit. This is the Country Telegraph.